Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Have your talents been leaving? Have you been finding it hard to attract people to your business? Thank you. The fact that you're here with us in this webinar tells me that you know the pain of having the greatest plans, but everything falls short because you didn't have the right people in place. You know the pain of finding them and keeping them. And in today's world, the expectations on sustainability, net zero, are pressing more and more on businesses. And you know that it's something you can't ignore, but really struggle to find the right people. So today, we would like to share with you why sustainability, climate action, and circular economy is increasingly central to winning the talent war, and what you can do about it so that your people are ignited to help your business thrive in this new era of business that's defined by sustainability. Hello, everyone. My name is Lee Jin Chin, and I am the chairperson of Circular Business Association. Welcome to our webinar, Winning the Talent War with Sustainability, Climate, and Circular Economy. For those of you who do not know me, my background has always been in the environmental scene, from volunteering to activism to a basic degree in environmental management and sciences, and then public policy, where I was part of the team that drafted the National Millennium Development Goals final report and the first national voluntary review of the Sustainable Development Goals for the Malaysian government before pursuing an environmental economics master's degree and becoming the Smith and Mather Fellow on circular economy since 2016. The list could go on, but you sort of get my drift. Climate, environment, sustainability is my thing, and I love equipping and empowering others with powerful tools to get more real climate action done faster. So what we actually do at Circular Business Association, which we had founded in 2022, is essentially to be an ecosystem builder that aims to accelerate business transition into the circular economy so that we can solve the climate crisis and create a livable world. We realize that there is this gap between governments, economic regions, private sector, and financial institutions who have already said they're going to have commitments in climate action and sustainability. But when it comes down to who is on the ground that's delivering these actions and plans, there's a major gap there. And therefore, our association is actually forming this ecosystem in order to fill this implementation gap, not only including those in manufacturing, but all the other various talents and businesses as well. And today's webinar, we got solution providers, including ourselves, from the learned realm of our ecosystem, which basically is one of 5 realms that organizations need to perform in order to thrive in the coming years. Because this topic is really close to our heart, because you can have all these different structures like sustainability, ESG, sustainable development goals that tell you the why, the what, or even circular economy that says the how. But people are the ones that's central to actually deliver and grow the pace and scale we need for meaningful action. Or it could also do the reverse. So I'm very pleased today to be joined by 3 of my fellow comrades in this journey towards winning the talent war. We have with us Shusheng Wong, who is the COO of GoImpact Capital, who will be covering disrupting ESG learning, impact made easy for many. GoImpact is our MOU partner that is involved in the providing an online platform where there is learning and micro-learning that enables more people to actually learn about and convert into action towards sustainability. They are based in Singapore and Hong Kong, and they are also one of the key contributing providers for the Malaysian Stock Exchange Bursa Malaysia's mandatory course on ESG Learning for Board of Directors. Shusha has an extensive background in commercial banking as well as a lawyer. And as a key proponent of sustainability, he actually also has been developing a number of these courses and strategies and programs in order to help businesses sort of transition over. Secondly, I'm joined by Livy Parlington, who is the commercial lead for Climate Clarity, and she'll be covering engaging talent and empowering with storytelling. Livy actually is a linguist and a physiotherapist turned climate entrepreneur. And she is personally passionate about engaging more people into taking action that's meaningful to solve the climate situation and achieve sustainability. Climate Clarity is our association strategic partner, and not only do they're a business of facilitators that delivering workshops, not only in the climate systems, but also in relation to biodiversity and also circular economy. Lastly, I'm joined by Jacqueline Joannis, who is the senior partner at Starlight Navigate. They are based in Malaysia, and she is one of the key developers of the ESG board game called ESG Batos that is being used to help upskill corporates into understanding the ESG. Jacqueline has a background in image consulting, image development consulting. And she also is the president for the Association of Image Consultants International Malaysian chapter. Also, she has certifications in terms of reporting under the GRI standards, including reporting for the human rights, as well as the integration of sustainable development goals into your corporate social responsibility, corporate responsibility reporting. So with that, welcome Shushan, welcome Livy, and welcome Jacqueline. Before I pass the floor over to them, I just want to briefly actually talk about our association so that you have a better understanding about what we do. Our big why is to solve the climate crisis and create a livable world. Yeah. And how we want to do that is actually by accelerating business transition into the circular economy. We've chosen circular economy as our pathway to achieve these goals in sustainability and climate action because it's very much based in system design, thinking further upstream, and the entire narrative around the circular economy is really into tapping into human ingenuity and hope in order for us to drive faster action by design. Sorry. Why we chosen circular economy is also because we realize that renewable energy is not going to get us there on its own because 45% of the emissions and a lot of environmental impact is actually in how we make and use products on a day-to-day basis. Secondly, although consumers are the last point before pollution emerges, we realize that just the way of changing the way of life is not going to be sufficient to really drive the pace and scale that we need in order to solve the climate situation. And livelihoods, how people actually make their incomes, is actually a very strong point that remains untapped, and we would like to be part of changing that. So the challenge for our association and also the goal is how can we rapidly replace all linear economy products with circular economy products in the next 7 to 8 years? The timeline, the runway is really short, as is informed by the climate science that we know today. In fact, COP28 just concluded a few days ago, and the global stock take about where our progress is does actually show that we are still moving towards a temperature increase. And there's a lot more work to do if we want to keep that increase within the 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2030. That's what we really need to focus on. So how we plan to accelerate is actually to help more circular economy players increase the sales revenue and customer base, as well as increase the circular economy offerings in the market and the competitive advantage we have over the typical take, make, and then throw away sort of culture that we have. Second is, lastly, we also support regulators in implementing policies that can accelerate the circular economy. And it is our sort of dream that eventually we will bring together 1,000 companies that can help another 1,000 companies achieve their sustainability and climate commitments together. Now, with that, I guess we come back to this topic in terms of the talent war, and it's something that has, been talked about very much since the pandemic has happened. Some people call it the Great Resignations, the Big Quit, a talent shortage, whatever you call it. That companies are definitely struggling in terms of finding the right talents. And there are, of course, many factors that contribute towards, this talent war. Part of it was the pandemic that happened, which brought about a new reality of remote working, flexible work time, working from home. At the same time, we also have, factors such as the aging population globally. That's happening, whereby there are just more and more people in the older age groups, as well as immigration restrictions and things like that. But importantly, as well, as we move into the sustainability era, and there's increasingly sort of compliance needs that's being put in place, we're starting to see that there's a change in terms of the skills that may be necessary for companies to thrive. This is a news that sort of came about earlier this year, where there's literally a bidding war that's happening for ESG talents, and headhunters are finding it, increasingly attractive, I guess, to find qualified candidates, because there is a shortage in this realm. So, before I pass the floor on to our speakers who are sharing today, I would like to just sort of share this quote that was made by the CBI Director General during a Future of Work conference, where he said that today's war for talent is about numbers, yes, but it's more than ever a competition about values. And values refer to the values that a company holds, the values of work that it promotes. And much of this is also driven by the expectations of the workforce of how businesses should contribute to their lives and the wider society. And during the pandemic, we did see quite a number of people actually revisit that whole issue of purpose, not only about profits, but at the same time, profits are also important, so that we make sure that talents who are contributing to solving the climate crisis as the last generation that can actually do so are also able to survive and thrive in their own lives as well. Now, finally, the warning in terms of climate action is that the pace and scale at this point is really insufficient to tackle the climate change. From COP28, where you can see that there is renewed sort of commitment in this direction, but there is still a lot that we haven't yet achieved. And Climate Movement 1.0, which is very much based on a noble cause, charity, no profit sort of direction, or emphasis in individual sort of choices or vertical industries focus, that's very much driven with this narrative of minimizing the bad, and trying to, look at not good enough. Essentially, this whole movement of Climate Movement 1.0 has been driven by guilt. And unfortunately, that's not going to deliver the pace and scale we need in this next 7 to 8 years. So as an association, we truly believe that the update to our climate movement is necessary, and an update to the sustainability movement as well, in terms of bringing together the economy, the way of life, as well as livelihoods, and really draw in the power of profits, ecosystem, and empowerment, so that we can ignite the passions of the people that really are sitting in various organizations, while also making sure that they are taken care of and that they can also take care of their families. The new reality is that if business owners don't start leading the change, you'll end up chasing the change. So with that, I'd like to bring on board our first speaker, who is going to share today. Shushan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Lichin, and it's a pleasure to be here today. Thanks once again for the wonderful introduction you have. I'm just going to share a few slides, but I think given the number of attendees and the fact that today's probably a Friday afternoon and we're all a little bit tired after a long day and long week, let's keep it free flowing and welcome any questions anyone might have. So
that's great. Thanks, Shushan.
So just to go into what my company does, what we do, we're actually involved in sustainability education. So that's me. I'm going to gloss over most of it since I think that Jin has already covered it. So I actually was a senior banker up until a couple of years ago. And then after that, I left and I decided to go into sustainability education. I basically reinvented myself. And I think that's an interesting story to tell in relation to the question that Legion posed on, how do we find the right talent for sustainability related jobs nowadays? So I reinvented myself, taught everything. And one of my mentors actually said, I asked one of my mentors, what's the best way to learn about sustainability? And his response was, well, the best way to learn is to teach it. And voila, there we are. And somehow I think the teaching has taken off. I'm now also a senior fellow on sustainability at Singapore Institute of International Affairs, and I'm a certified green and sustainable finance professional with the Chartered Banker Institute as well. So I think our driving ethos is really there's something wrong with the world. How do we change it? And how do we change it quickly? Because as Lichin mentioned, climate change is fast upon us, and we're certainly not moving fast enough to try to mitigate the changes that are happening. Indeed, I think a lot of the talk nowadays is focusing more on the adaptation that's required rather than the mitigation. And what we do was, we realized that there was a gap in terms of the sustainability education out there. We realized that while a lot of people were talking about climate change, a lot of people were talking about sustainability, a lot of people were talking about greenhouse gases and scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, not enough people actually understood what it all meant. And really, what needs to change is actually the culture, the way we think, the way we live. And that's something that it seems very, very hard for present society to understand at this point in time. Indeed, a lot of companies and organizations treat sustainability purely as a product, a new product to sell, to market, to advertise, and to make money from. And I think that's something that is fundamentally not what we should be doing. What we should be doing in terms of sustainability is we should be trying to change the way we live, to make it more sustainable, to go from a culture of consumerism to a culture of trying to retain things for as long as we can so that they can be passed on to future generations. And we also realized that the sustainability landscape in Asia was quite fragmented. There were very few education providers at the time that we started. Of course, that has since grown and has grown very rapidly. And there was a supply-demand gap. And you can see here, just need to open the newspapers nowadays. And you can see that there's always going to be several articles, whatever newspaper you open, on sustainability, on global warming, on climate change. It's definitely dominating the news, and to a certain extent, it's also becoming rather political in nature. And we can see that Asia traditionally has always been a huge growth market for education, not just sustainability education, but education in general. A lot of the focus has been, of course, on the preschool education, the primary and secondary and university level. But what is really lacking is education for adults, especially working adults. And we've identified there's a gap and realized that particularly for sustainability, where the very concept itself is relatively new in the mainstream, there is a lack of that education that's being imparted to the working adults. Similarly, we can see that there has been a 30% growth in hiring of green jobs between 2016 to 2021. But there is indeed a global shortage of talent, skills, and jobs to deliver on the transition into a green economy. So the fastest growing green skills that we've identified indeed have actually been that of ecosystem management, environmental policy, and pollution prevention. A lot of people forget that sustainability is extremely wide-ranging. It's more than just green. It's more than just environment. There are also social issues to consider. There are also waste management, resource management issues to consider. So a lot of this deals with supply chain and indeed the circular business economy that we have talked about previously, and also how to optimize the various resources that we have so that they're not wastefully spent and cannot be properly disposed of as well. So we can see that there's a lot of call for, in particular, very holistic, wide-ranging sustainability managers. Those are the ones who can identify the various linkages between your environment, social, governance, compliance, waste management, resource management concerns, rather than looking for real specialists who are really, more product-centric in nature. Because once again, we're looking at trying to change cultures within societies and organizations. And of course, there's this huge rise in the need for renewable energy specialists as well, solar consultants, wind turbine technicians. So these are definitely in much demand right now. So what's our solution? Well, we started off by offering in-person lectures. Our model was really to partner with higher education learning institutions. We would white label the content that we create, as well as our teachers. And we rely on the higher educational institutions to provide the marketing as well as the student intakes for us. That has been very successful in the past couple of years. And we've realized that although the progress has been good, it hasn't been fast enough. While we are hitting certain key individuals, especially our lecturers that have been targeting the C-suites and the board of director level, we're not hitting the masses. And indeed, it's the masses that actually do need that education, which is why we've come up with our own learning management system, our own asynchronous online learning modules, which ideally should be able to target people wherever they are around the world and work 24/7. One of the problems with in-person lecturers is that they are limited by the lecturers themselves. Lecturers need to sleep, lecturers need to eat, lecturers need to do other things. Whereas the asynchronous learning platform can operate at the learner's own time and own target and own convenience. And it's especially useful to engage the learners in the spare time that they have. We offer a comprehensive framework centered, of course, around the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 SDGs, and the 5 key pillars around that. And this is a swathe of the true, all the learning that we cover. It's quite holistic in nature, as you can see. We're obviously constantly working on developing new topics and new modules as well. And these are the modules that we are indeed currently offering with our partners. Again, very extensive, covering a full panorama of activities and industries and topics. And just a little bit of color on exactly what goes into the content. We've got the illustration of the fundamentals. We talk about the various organizations that are involved. We talk about the impacts in particular, or what happens if climate change is unchecked, or what happens if social reforms are not achieved. We drill down a little bit more specifically into various things. We provide granular detail in particular on the various reporting frameworks, the reporting agencies, what the requirements are. We actually take participants through a sort of playthrough of creating their own reports as well. We talk about new policies that are coming into shape globally as well as regionally and domestically. And we offer what we hope is good Asian-centric case studies. Of course, our library is constantly increasing on this because we do see that more and more businesses are getting involved in sustainability. And we invite participation from the various group activities that we conduct as well. And indeed, I think we'll be talking about Climate Fresk later. Climate Fresk is part of our participation group studies and group activities that we also do offer to our students. We have excellent delivery results. Typically, our evaluations rank about 4.5 out of 5. And I think the testimony from our participants who have gone through our courses speaks for themselves. Now on to the LMS. One thing we identified was that it's not good enough to have the sort of normal video recorded sessions. We realized that they need the online material needs to be very interactive, and that's because learners themselves tend to get bored very easily. They need entertainment. So what we've done is we've introduced the gamification into our modules. We've introduced self-analytical reviews on what the participants feel that they've learned and achieved. We've introduced quizzes, assessment programs, and of course, we have developed our own videos, quite a lot of them using artificial intelligence technology, utilizing the use of virtual avatars, speaking in multiple different languages to convey the educational intent. And very importantly, we've also recognized that some people really have very, very short attention spans nowadays. So we've created little micro-learning modules for them. These micro-learning modules range from 5 minutes to 10 minutes long. And the idea is that if you're on the way to work, you're sitting in the train or sitting in the bus, you want to do a little bit of learning, just sit for those modules and do it. Likewise, if you're coming back from work. And if you're doing that twice a day, 5 days a week, that actually adds up to 15 minutes of learning, which can be quite significant. In particular, we've realized from the corporates that we engage that they really like this learning style because it doesn't eat into the employee time that's supposed to be dedicated in the office. A lot of employers in particular, they balk at the idea of sending their employee for a full-day training course. Indeed, even a half-day training course is sometimes too much for them. But when we tell the employer that actually, we can do this micro-learning for you, and the employees can do it on their own time outside of the office. That's when the employers start to sit up and pay attention to it, because you're training your employee, but you're not doing it on company time. I think overall it's an arrangement that works very well. And of course, needless to say, even for the micro-learning modules, anyone who sits for it can stop it at any point in time and pick it up at a later time, at a safe point, so that they don't have to repeat the course all over again. So as I mentioned earlier, we have gamification, interactive activities, engagement-driven online learning courses. The beauty is that if there are any existing learning management platforms from the corporates, we simply just rent the SCORM files to them so that they can plug it into their existing LMS platforms. Or alternatively, we can actually engage in an open API link to their internal online systems so that essentially the internal systems can link to our LMS platform, and it forms a fundamental part of their normal internal office management system. And of course, we can tailor the learning management platform so that it looks, to all intents and purposes, like it comes from that particular corporate itself. We can change the colors, the logos, the look, so that no one will be the wiser as to where the LMS platform actually comes from. They'll think that it comes from that corporate in question. So the online part, I think in particular, is the key in terms of really ramping up the understanding of sustainability in the region. Our target market is indeed pretty much the whole of Asia. So we have some rather ambitious goals. We started off in Hong Kong and then in Singapore and then Malaysia. But we're now looking at whole of Asia, particularly with online learning. And we have a lot of credibility at the top tier universities. We have got engagements with the China University of Hong Kong, Temasek Polytechnic, Singapore Management University, Hong Kong Management Association. In Malaysia, we have engagements with the Asia School of Business, the Institute of Corporate Directors of Malaysia, through which we are running the compulsory Bursa Malaysia Sustainability Education Program for the listed board directors. And we also have various engagements with other partner platforms as well that are offering online modules. And last but not least, credentials are everything, right? So we're members of CRI, of TNFD, GRI, competent boards, and of course we support TCFD. And if anyone wants to check us out a little bit more, that's our QR code as well as our URL. And encourage you guys to drop us any questions that you might have. Thank you so much for listening.
Right. Thanks very much, Susan, for that overview of course, the trends that you're seeing in terms of the talent demand that we're seeing in the sustainability realm, as well as how GoImpact actually solves that problem. We will have like Q&A session at the end, but I'll highly encourage our attendees, if you have any questions for the panelists, please drop it into the Q&A function in Zoom so that we can address it near the end. So the next person that I'd like to bring on is Olivia from Climate Clarity, where she will be talking about and how they are using card games and storytelling to engage people through workshops. So Olivia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Great. I'll just go into presenter mode. Yeah, so as Legion said, I'm Olivia and I am from Climate Clarity. We are based in the UK, but we offer our kind of solution online, globally, and then in person. So I'm just going to generally talk about what we do, how we do it, and then link that back into why we're here today talking about talent. So really this is our mission, but the hardest piece of this puzzle is that engaging and empowering piece. So I like to think of us possibly the bit before GoImpact, the kind of the spark that gets people talking around a table and excited and motivated to further their learning. And how do we do that? So we do in-person and online workshops. They take half a day, and that's part of a transformative learning curve. We then train facilitators to effectively do our job and carry on in that internal organization to become facilitators. And there's two reasons why we do that. And Xusheng mentioned, things not happening quick enough. Well, we can't possibly be everywhere training everybody. And so we really want to encourage organizations to train as facilitators. The second reason is because they understand internal culture and governance. So it's much easier to train them to be able to affect action when they become the internal drivers and people are accountable to them. So we take them through a workshop, then we train, and then we support. So you're really trying to get highly skilled internal facilitators by the end. We have an ongoing ambassador package, which is effectively one-to-one coaching and co-facilitation. So what is the Climate Press? So we have a few different workshops, but I'm just going to talk mainly about the Climate Press today. That's the sort of flagship workshop. We are a delivery partner of the Climate Press NGO. And the NGO actually came about in about 2015, 2016, when a professor was trying to teach his students about the IPCC and the content of it, but as you know, I think there's 6,000 scientists' contribution. It's a very, very long document. So what he did in the end was take all of the graphs and pictures in that report and what is now 42 cards. And effectively, the class just put them in order from cause and effect. And he found it was a really effective way to teach and to learn. So it was creating their own story out of the IPCC. That's obviously developed, and there's now a supporting actions part, emotions part, which I'll go through in a little bit. That's essentially where the Climate Press gets its information. So a very thorough consortium of research. So it was founded in France. It's been delivered to over 1 million people in 45 languages. And it's really for everybody. Yes, it gives you this great overview of climate science, but it's really about getting different teams, different departments around a table and collaborating so that everybody is heading in the same direction. There's a blanket level of understanding, and it fosters that teamwork that you need to then go away and solve all problems. So I was going to do this as more of an interactive, but maybe if you just bear that sentence in mind for a couple of minutes. Why is it complicated to speak about climate change? And whether that be, at the pub with friends around a dinner table, or, at school and organizations, it's quite an emotive topic, and it's hard to speak about. And that's what we want to break down, because if we don't speak about it, we can't possibly do anything about it. So these are often the things that come up. It can be boring for some. I didn't know who, but some. But it's really complex. There's so many different pieces to this, and that doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk about it. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't say, I don't know, or have different opinions. And it can be quite a tricky one to bring up. I think definitely with my own family members, it can be quite divisive. So we want to break down those barriers of not talking about it. And the reason Climate Fresque is good for that is kind of these different components. So it's playful. We don't want people to go away feeling overwhelmed. We want it to keep it light, but then still have all the scientific facts. It's a great learning tool because it's so visual. So it's very much picture-based. Each card has its descriptions, but it's really a visual learning tool. It uses that collective intelligence because you've got everyone around a table, and there's a piece for creativity to come to the table. So what exactly happens in a workshop? It's 3 hours, which seems like a lot, but you're not being taught. You are effectively teaching yourselves, and we are facilitating that. So the first hour and a half is based around the climate science, and you are effectively building the story and the bigger picture yourself. You're putting yourself in it so that it's more relevant, and you're more motivated to do something about it. The second phase is in creativity. So you're giving it a title, you're connecting the dots, you're putting your own examples into the picture of, okay, yes, this is happening on a global scale, but how is that happening to me in my neighborhood? So it becomes personal. That third phase is the emotions phase. We don't often give emotions the space they need. And this is an emotional topic. Whether that be fear, anger, denial, they're all versions of emotions. So we give it that space and we share. We welcome those feelings. And then the last phase is the action part. And that might be individual actions at home. That might be actions around your sustainability strategy if we're working with organizations. So that's really tailored to the audience. So what I might do now is just show you an example. I said we do this in person, obviously around a table, but if we were doing the digital version, I'm just going to show you in Mural, which I don't know if anybody's used Mural, but it's a great tool for our workshops. And we have the climate science part at the beginning. You have 5 sets of cards. This would be the first set. And what we'll be trying to get participants to do is to build a picture of how these cards would go in order from left to right in a line of cause and effect. So rather than getting you guys to do it, we would ask participants together, we wouldn't interrupt, or we're just facilitating. And gradually they would start to build a picture of what this looks like. And once you'd, locked that one. Once you build a picture, you're then going to ask the group different questions. Why have they put them in this way? We're going to facilitate corrections, and we're going to ask them to tell the story back to us. So each time they're solidifying the knowledge. So there'll always be key learning points, which comes first, human activities or fossil fuels? Why isn't it that the melting sea ice causes sea levels to rise? So there's different learning points that, as much as everybody thinks, okay, I know what the greenhouse gas effect is, it's the problem. Actually, it's the additional greenhouse gas effects that's the problem. So we're getting everybody on a level playing field of knowledge. So I'm just going to take you back to the slides. So that's set 1. And then gradually it builds a much bigger picture. So there's 42 cards, And by the end, because you've done this gradual learning, you're able to tell the story of really quite a complex topic, but have everything feeding in to understand that bigger systems thinking approach to climate. So I said I'd come back to, why is this relevant to talent? Just these facts alone, really. If you're in a company, you're often wanting your company to do more. And if you're looking for a job, you are certainly thinking about its sustainability credentials. So just to give you an example of that, last week I was speaking to sustainability data analyst at a financial institution, and two reasons he wanted to do this workshop. One was getting everyone, different departments around a table, intergenerational, but also he really wanted to give his younger employees the realization that they are part of this bigger picture and therefore motivate them in their role, because it's all well and good you're doing your siloed piece, but if you don't understand how that fits into the bigger picture, the motivation's just not there. There's a few different reasons why people come to us for the workshops. So I've spoken about the climate fresque, which is the kind of overall climate science picture, probably more relevant for the task force on climate-related financial disclosure. But as Xusheng mentioned, the nature-related financial disclosure, well, that's probably the biodiversity collage that's more relevant for that. The digital collage is great for the tech industry. I think emissions have gone from 1 to 4% the kind of digital emissions since 2010. So the digital collage is a rising need. Construction collage, obviously, for that sector, and then a circular economy collage. Often lots of people from retail or different areas, but there's usually a workshop for whatever industry you're in, but the climate fresque is a great place to start. And I'm just going to ask Li Jin to finally just play a 3-minute video, which, if I haven't described it well enough, hopefully the visual brings to life what a climate fresque is like. And this was something we did earlier this year at Westminster between Bankers for Net Zero and the Cayman Island government.
The times we're living in call for more than just numbers, parts per million and bottom lines. They call for our heads and our hearts, using the power of both to forge courageous, meaningful, long-term action. We are part of a dynamic and interconnected ecosystem that needs diversity and complexity to function. We are a part of nature, not apart from nature. And nature is the foundation upon which our societies and our economies are built.
Thank you everybody for coming today. For those that don't know me, I'm Heather Buchanan. I'm co-founder and chief executive of Bankers for Net Zero. So we convene the UK country chapter of the Net Zero Banking Alliance. The big things, of course, is even people understanding climate change. Today is very much just about kind of going through the experience. Hopefully you'll be able to take it away and go to your own organizations, potentially use it.
It's great that the Bankers for Net Zero and the Cayman Island government are holding, for the first time in and learning and growing through what really became an emotional, psychological, but also an emotional experience.
Our children will not forgive us if we leave them a world of withering heat and devastating storms, where sea levels rise and extreme temperatures force millions to move because their countries are no longer inhabitable.
You recognize what we have contributed to doing, but also you're empowered in recognizing that we can now, it's not too late, that we can facilitate change, we can create the change that we want to see in the world around us, and so hopefulness that we can be part of the change that needs to happen so that we are leaving a planet for our children and our grandchildren.
Moving the climate crisis from our heads to our hearts is an important part of the journey. Emotions, not just knowledge, are the key to driving action. And therein lies the essence of creating transformative change and seeing the magic happen. If we save nature, we save ourselves.
Thanks, Legion. I'm just going to put, when you stop sharing, I'm just going to put the link up at the end just so it's on the screen for a second. If anybody wants to, get in touch, be happy to speak to you. I'll pass over now to Jacqueline. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Olivia, for sharing that. I'm sure this is a very interesting addition into what people are talking about, mainly in ESG and sustainability seems to be all about being in the head and tapping into the heart. Is another step forward. So I'd like to now bring on board Jacqueline, who also, from their perspective, are tapping into the fun aspect of our human emotions. Jacqueline, you have the floor. Jacqueline, you're still on mute at the moment. Sorry.
Right, okay. Yeah, that happens always. Okay, thank you so much, Legion, for the introduction. And in the next few minutes, I'll be focusing on the sustainable development gamified learning, particularly important information revolves around the ESG Batos board game. And this gamified learning was developed in October 2022. And since then, we have been running the ESG gamified learning session using the board game as part of our learning materials. Our previous audiences have come from various backgrounds, such as corporate employees, entrepreneurs, SME owners, higher institution students, and government agencies employees. Okay. And just a brief about Starlight Navigate. We are a boutique consulting learning and development company that focuses on practical-based customization and empowerment-centric solutions. The company was founded by industry professionals and practitioners. And as I myself, I'm a senior partner, instructional designer, and a corporate trainer. A big chunk of my task is really to lead the team in analyzing, developing, designing, implement, and to evaluate learning and development interventions. So what is ESG Batos? Well, ESG Batos is really a word, or the Batos itself, it's a word taken from one of the indigenous tribes in Sabah, Borneo, Malaysia, called the Dusun tribe, Dusun Tindal tribe, to which I belong. And Batos means promise or pledge, and therefore ESG Batos signifies our commitment to prioritize the well-being of the environment, social, and good governance in our daily lives. So the ESG Batos is a gamified learning using board game, which developed by yours truly. The board game allows participants to really immerse themselves in a journey where they need to understand environmental, social, governance principles and to apply strategic decision making. Right, so to assist us in organizing our thoughts during this presentation, I'd like to invite us to focus on these guiding questions. First, what Starlight Navigate and ESG Batos is really trying to solve, and how do we solve it? How do we ensure the learning delivery design is fun and understandable for SME business owners or for our audience? And definitely how coaching and consulting play a role to help people take actions after the board game experience. And last but not least, what is the trend in the talent needs for companies who want to do well in the future? So let's start with the first one. So to start this, I would like to play a video. The video will showcase what Starlight Navigate ESG Batos is trying to solve and how do we solve it. So I'd like to show you the video to give you a better picture about the ESG Batos gamified learning using the board game. So what is currently happening in this part of the world is really the growing emphasis on sustainable development through ESG implementation. And at this point of time, it is happening at its fastest pace ever. Particularly, there is increased pressure from the governments and the regulators to prioritize compliance in ESG implementation. However, the problem lies in the fact that SME owners and employees lack knowledge about ESG principles, and they are struggling to find practical guidance and resources to integrate ESG into their business processes. So this makes it stressful for them, and this definitely discourage them to contribute to sustainable development and meeting their stakeholders' expectations. So this is the problem statement we have identified in developing our learning and intervention, where SME owners lack knowledge and ESG principle and struggling to find practical guidance in their business, guidance and resources to integrate ESG into their business practices. So with that, our design challenge was how might we provide guidance and support to SME owners specifically and employees in general who lack knowledge about ESG. So this will enable them to really incorporate ESG into their business processes and ultimately to take action. So what Starlight Navigate and ESG Batos board game is really trying to solve, and how do we solve, is really about the ESG Batos gamified learning is our innovative approach to address the challenges faced by SME business owners in understanding and implementing ESG practices. And the goal is to make ESG education more accessible and engaging for everyone involved. This to really to empower them to make informed decisions that align with their values and goals, and ultimately contributing to a more sustainable and responsible business landscape. So it offers a unique interactive learning experience that simplifies complex concepts and facilitates decision making. That's the most the core activity in that board game, and definitely in a fun and enjoyable way. So the intention is really to create a safe and inclusive space where business owners can learn and grow their understanding of the ESG principles. So during the gamified learning session, business owners can gain better understanding of ESG principle, like I mentioned earlier, through the gamified simulation, and they are able to navigate the complexity of or in a simulated environment where they are able to practice within the safe learning space. So the aim is to empower them to make informed decisions, like I mentioned earlier, and to align their business values and goals. And the board game is a tool that is both definitely entertaining and informative at the same time. So we design it in such a way that it allows them to learn at their own pace and in a way that suits their learning styles. So the next one is, how do we ensure that the learning delivery design is fun and understandable for SME business owners? So our learning experience, we will skip this one. So our learning experience design utilizes instructional design. That is my core expertise. We utilize instructional design principles that integrate adult learning, fundamentals, and accelerated learning methodology. So the gamified learning is designed as such to facilitate deeper understanding and practicality appreciation that lead to higher learning retention rate. So as much as we can, the learning session is to simulate, like I said just now, real world business practices that fulfills the practice by doing and teach others in the participatory teaching methodologies. So one of the main goals of SN is we would like to continuously design learning about ESG in a fun and understandable experience for SME business owners. We understand that ESG can sometimes be overwhelming or confusing. So we want to create a solution that makes it more accessible and enjoyable. So in order to achieve this, the learning session incorporates gamified elements. In fact, Batos board game is one of our tools. We have a few more other gamified materials. And these gamification elements, like what the two panelists mentioned earlier, add an extra layer. It will add an extra layer of excitement to the learning processes. So we have included challenges and rewards to make the experience engaging and interactive. So by presenting the information, dry information about ESG in a game format, we aim to simplify the complex concept so that it's easy for them to understand. So again, our approach is really about breaking down barriers to learning and encouraging active participation. We want business owners to feel empowered and motivated to go deeper into the world of ESG, because in Malaysia, ESG seems to be a scary word at the moment. Everybody seems like feeling that the ESG is something really a sophisticated elements that they have to understand. But through this intervention, we hope that by making the learning processes enjoyable, we hope to foster a sense of curiosity, and therefore our participant will gain a better retention rate in terms of learning. So just imagine if you are in that session, playing a board game, having a great time with your fellow business owners. Therefore, the learning feels like less like a chore and more like an exciting adventure. So how coaching, consulting play a role to help people take action after the board game experience? In our opinion, coaching and consulting play a crucial role in helping participants to take action after the board game experience with ESG Batos, gamified learning. We understand that knowledge alone is not enough. So it's the application of that knowledge that truly makes a difference. So the gamified learning provides a solid foundation of knowledge and understanding that coaching comes in to provide personalized guidance and support. And our experts are there to help these participants or our clients to translate their newfound knowledge so that they can be assisted in identifying their specific areas of improvements, setting their goals and developing implementation plans tailored to their needs. So we also believe that the post-training support session are designed to provide ongoing support, accountability, and of course, motivate them to continue further in terms of planning their ESG implementation to their business processes. So we want to ensure that the lesson learned from the board game experience are effectively applied in real-world scenarios, so that this will bridge the gaps between theory and practice. And we aspire to empower participants to take meaningful action and drive positive change within their organization. Now, everybody understood that coaching is a collaborative process between a coach and a coachee. So we help through this collaborative process. We help individuals overcome challenges and gain clarity, and of course to stay focused on their goals. In this context is about the ESG implementation. So therefore we truly understand that the coaching session, post-training session, or the post-learning session is necessary to turn knowledge into actions. So therefore, we are there to support them in that context. And what is the trend in the talent needs for companies who want to do well in the future? Well, in my interaction with industry players, sustainability has gained significant attention. Companies are really recognizing the importance of environmental responsibility and social consciousness. As a result, there are a lot of them are seeking individuals with exceptional talent and expertise in sustainability and ESG. So not only that businesses also been looking for professionals who can develop sustainable strategies, like report on environmental and social impact. And even I've also encountered they would like to explore further or explore some expertise around renewable energy and circular economy practices. In Malaysia, this circular economy practices is pretty new, but many organizations are already looking into this. So therefore, they are looking for professionals in that field. And I've also had a conversation around the capital markets demands on ESG factors increasingly influencing investment decisions. This means that the demands for experts who can analyze ESG risks and opportunities, and of course, devising intelligent investment strategies are really needed. And again, I have been encountering again and again the significance of regulation and reporting. So in Malaysia, the government is really taking ESG and sustainability seriously. That's why we have GoImpact coming to Malaysia to really educate our government or certain organization. So consequently, companies are really looking for professionals who can navigate these regulations and effectively communicate their sustainable performance through reporting. And not to mention also that technology is also playing a pivotal role, important role in this field. The data analytics, AI, and blockchain, all that I have had the conversation that becoming really needed, and therefore experts around this subject matter or this field is really needed. Yeah. And in our case, the social impact, social return on its investment, social impact, there are more and more companies want to make a positive contribution to their communities, embracing equity, diversity, and inclusion. So professionals who knows about or who are experts in measuring the SROI, social return on investment, and they are also able to engage with communities and manage diversity will be highly sought after. Yeah, that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline, for that session. It's good to see that, the various providers are actually playing at different layers. There's the people up in the C-suite and executive that also need it. There are also people down at the SME level where, day-to-day sort of making a living is going to be the priorities in their mind. And they actually form the value chains for a lot of these bigger players that's involved in that journey towards sustainability. And of course, I think what from all three panel speakers actually we managed to hear about is that, very much it's not just about knowing something, but actually how do you motivate them to then take the action? And there are many different trigger points where you could use in order to sort of like start nudging people in that direction, or even aligning themselves together. So I think like before we jump into the quick Q&A, I just wanted to sort of like quickly share this picture because I think when we're talking about how talents are being a very important part actually in terms of how companies would actually play the sustainability game. We actually have to remember that it's not so much a defense play, but it's actually a very much offense play. And the best defense is actually to play offense in this case. So I found it very interesting that the three panelists actually brought about, like, there's the knowledge part, of course, that is important, and aligning people to be on that same page is important. But there's also this thing about surrounding yourself with the right people. It could be through the virtual sort of realms where you have your avatars and things like that, but there's also that in-person part of it, whereby if someone actually made the point to attend some form of workshop, be it online or in person, there is this feeling that these are the people who are in that like-minded realm as yourself, where eventually we want to lean into more and more in order to help each other grow. I also found it quite interesting that, apart from playing that emotion part up to that point in time, there's that continuous support in terms of coaching and consulting that then becomes an opportunity as well, not only to continue supporting people and driving them towards them taking action, but also it is a part of the business. I mean, all three of you are actually business people, and I guess that's where I would like to really just open the floor into the Q&A session, which is actually to talk a little bit about this. The two questions that we've already received before the webinar, one of it was actually talking about as business owners, they may already be facing difficulties in hiring talent. So how can they actually become like more proactive in terms of engaging with talents? It could be talents that they may only just meet through interviews, but there are also talents in-house already. Maybe they've been with them for many, many years, but should they actually be more proactive in this case? And how should they go about opening that conversation? Maybe you can start off with Shusha and then Olivia.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think what I'm doing in this business right now is directed specifically at that. We need retraining. The fact is that sustainability, or at least the modern concept of sustainability as we know it, is very new. There are very few universities around the world that have been teaching sustainability as, a university undergraduate degree. And indeed, the vast majority of them are found in Europe anyway. So, and if you look at Asia, really the only universities that are even starting to look at that as a master's degree are those in Singapore. And if you look even further back at the basic sort of primary school and secondary school, junior college level education that's going around in the world, there's very little formalized sustainability education being taught either, which in a way I find rather unusual, given that it's indeed this sort of generation that will be suffering the most from climate change in the future. But I think, to cut a long story short, employers need to be more flexible. They need to understand that it's going to be difficult to find people who have that sort of many years of experience in sustainability and therefore are the right people to hire. There's a huge shortage of such people to begin with. They need to look at actually retraining existing employees, be more flexible in finding new hires who have already undertaken some sort of retraining on sustainability on their own, and getting them used to what sustainability is, how it applies specifically to their business, so that they can do the new sustainability focused tasks that are required, particularly in the areas of reporting, risk management, and establishing control frameworks. In fact, one of the areas in which GoImpact is partnered in is we partnered with the Skills Future SG, which is a Singapore Stat Board. And what they are trying to do is they're actually specifically trying to retrain adult learners, particularly those who are midway through their careers, into transitioning into more sustainability focused jobs. And so they created a special program called the Skills Future Career Transition Program, directed at retraining individuals from all walks of life into learning about sustainability, so that they can be plugged into sustainability roles in the workplace. And I'm proud to say that we are actually in charge of conducting that program and teaching it to these adult learners.
I think that point about like being flexible in terms of realizing that they're not going to be able to tick all the boxes per se in terms of all these so-called experience. Very often you do see like 5 or 10 years experience required in the sustainability realm.
Yeah, I mean that's unrealistic, quite frankly. I mean, as I said, sustainability as a concept is so new. I mean, if you want to move it back to where we come with a modern concept of sustainability is really with the SDGs back in 2015. That's less than 10 years old. And indeed, if you look at the panel speakers right now, myself, I believe, Olivia and Jacqueline, we're not from sustainability focused disciplines. I started off as a lawyer. Yet we are doing this right now. And is it so much to ask for, adults to be retrained? No, lifelong learning is essential.
Yep, that's very great to hear. I think Olivia seems to have something she wanted to chip in at that point.
Yeah, I just think it's such an opportunity, sustainability, isn't it, to get that people working intergenerationally and at different seniority levels of the business. You're kind of resetting that, how we work together, and the tool is sustainability. And then secondly, I think one of our focuses is to do pilot workshops with HR teams so that in those, the processes of interviews, wherever it may be, they feel empowered that they can ask questions about sustainability because they personally have an overview of their company's sustainability strategy and how it fits into the bigger picture. So I guess it's, twofold: training the people who are going to be recruiting, but equally not expecting everyone to walk through the door as a finished package. But what a nice way to onboard them into the business and the culture of the business, through shouting about sustainability and having them work with people who are already there.
Yeah, I think that point that you mentioned about onboarding as well is quite interesting, because when talents do actually, who do care very much about sustainability, do enter a company that maybe in terms of on the paper it looks like, yeah, that's somewhere where they will be able to contribute their impact. But when the onboarding process itself doesn't seem to be ready for these talents to go in and contribute, from your experience, has this been something that had been very frustrating and maybe even disempowering, that eventually leads to these talents leaving their positions in that company and looking for something else?
I was just going to say, it's one thing saying you're doing X, Y, Z, or even having your sustainability strategy published somewhere, but how does that new individual engage with it the minute they walk through the door so that it's actually implemented? And that's the key bit you want to help them with.
Right. Thanks very much. And in the Q&A, actually, we have a question directed to Starlight Navigate, Jacqueline. In terms of like the post-game sort of consulting and coaching is important. Do you actually like proactively during these sessions actually and encourage them to enroll for those type of like consulting sessions? And how has that sort of experience been so far for people to take up that additional support?
Right. The board game is basically one of our materials that we use during our corporate training face-to-face. So usually it will take around half a day for that particular board game. But what's most important is really about how they can apply, or what can they apply post the experience. So when we have, usually we will have a session ranging from half a day to 2 days. So if we do have that luxury of time, let's say 2 days, then we will have that ample time to guide our participants in terms of doing that preliminary planning, or rather strategic planning, so that subsequently post-training program, they will then be able to engage us in a way in terms of through consultation, so that that particular plan that they have initiated during the session can be really then be implemented in the organization. But most of the time, what happened has been is really about when they have the preliminary understanding and preliminary planning, they will usually do it on their own first. And then if they do encounter a problem or issues, then they will come back to us and get our input or insights.
Right. Thanks very much, Jacqueline. And so another question that I think that we received before the webinar was in relation to this uptrend in terms of like more informal learning settings. I think Shu Sheng did actually touch a bit on that, to like say, there's actually not that many so higher learning institutions that are delivering sustainability content in that formal setting. But why is there like this sudden like a boom in terms of this uptrend of informal learning and almost learning like from peers, apart from it being quite a new topic, I guess. But what are your thoughts on that, especially since part of your products actually do tap into that more informal learning settings part of it?
Yeah, I think if I'll go first, there's so much research into the behavioral science and the psychology of communication, and in the past we focused on the rational side of people and just completely ignored the emotional aspects, and you end up focusing on objective facts and figures, and it instills this, internal guilt, blame, fear, and that's just been proved to be completely ineffective in terms of motivating action. So then now we're appealing more into hope, joy, gratitude, which we know is more effective, and it also increases well-being. So it's a sort of double whammy. The evidence is there and it's working.
Right. Thanks for that.
mean,
Yep. So,
I think that in terms of the need for more informal learning, it's really out of necessity. I mean, the reality is that sustainability, especially the climate science part of it, is moving so rapidly that it's actually very, very hard to keep up to date with it. If you say had a formalized degree in environmental management 3 years ago, quite a bit of that, especially the climate science and climate change aspects, would now be changed in light of the new findings, new discoveries, and new reports that are coming out at breakneck speed. If we look at the changes from AR4 to AR6 done by the IPCC, you can already see huge changes there in terms of what they've discovered and what they've advised on. And it's happening at such a speed that what I find is that the formalized educational programs being run by the traditional educational institutions actually cannot cope. They aren't moving fast enough. They can't move fast enough. And in some ways, they're not trained to move fast enough either, right? I come from an educational background where in high school, I was still learning Greek and Latin. I mean, honestly speaking, how useful is that to what I do today? I don't think I don't remember speaking Greek for more than 30 years. But anyway, so to my point, there is a need for more fast-paced, moving educational institutions or modes of education to teach this. The other thing is that what we've seen is, especially for the younger generations, they have very, very short attention spans. The more formalized Socratic mode of education doesn't work for them. They need their short YouTube videos that are, 30 seconds long, their TikTok videos, 1 minute long. And that's how they learn. And you have to adapt education to meet the needs of that other generation. And you don't see that happening, certainly, with our universities.
Yep. Jacqueline, anything you'd like to chip in there? Thanks, Shusheng, for that. Oh, I think her internet.
Apologies because my connection problem. Because it's raining heavily in Kuala Lumpur. It's always like that. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Unstable connection. Oh, okay.
Yep, we can hear you now.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, I think just sort of following on from the point that Shusheng mentioned. So I actually belong to that very small category of people who actually pursue the formal education in environmental management and sciences. And as you say, Shusheng, a lot of the things that we learned back then, it's actually changing so quickly. In fact, probably the most important thing that I took away from that formal education was more of how to actually learn to catch up with all this new information that's coming through. And for business owners, I think sometimes there can be a sense of like overwhelm and overkill at the same time, because like maybe there's so much that needs to be absorbed in the sustainability realm that it's very difficult for them to comprehend fully whether that's going to be useful for the business or not. If there are any further sort of like thoughts that you have, I'll go one last round to our panel speakers. Any final thoughts that you have in relation to the topic that we had today? Maybe we can start with Jacqueline.
Yeah, really, I mean, just to write on the informal learning settings, as an instructional designer, I really an advocate for that setting or for that design, because, well, really just to write on Shusheng's points about schools, right? When we were in school, when was the time when you really remember the most? It was during recess, it's during sports day. So that's the time when we were learning informally. And that's the part where the most the most effective and engaging, and that's why we remember the most, right? So I think as an instructional designer, I always design my learning deliveries in such a way that it is casual, it is informal, it is interesting, but again, I really have to frame it in such a way that it's not play, but it's purposeful play. My core, or rather the thinking that I always have when I'm designing is what Albert Einstein mentioned about play is the highest form of research, and learning is not consumption, learning is a creation. So it's always the case that it has to be driven from the fact that I want to learn, I want to make sense of what is happening around me as a participant. So yeah, so that's why I think I can only speak what I have been observing surrounding me in Malaysia. When it comes to subject matter of ESG, everyone has got the idea that okay, ESG is really dry. It's something that it's new, but it's actually not so new. How can I, as a person who are already in that field of education, imparting knowledge and skills, I have to make sure that it's not as scary after all.
Thanks very much, Jacqueline, for that. Olivia, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I guess we don't have all the answers, and I think that's what people find quite scary. But the beauty is that human creativity and empowering individuals with knowledge and motivation. You just don't know where the solutions are going to come from. So just taking a step in that direction, might be the best thing we can do right now. But doing something is better than holding back until you've got all the solutions laid out. Just give people the information, and it's amazing what they can do with it. You don't know where they're going to come from.
Right. Thanks very much, Olivia. And Shushan, any last thoughts?
Well, I think, again, in the strive, as people strive for continual learning, and I think it's a very valid issue, given that we're all getting older, we're all living to longer ages, and yet at the same time, we see a lot of pressure from some governments to try to reduce and lower the retirement age. And indeed, a lot of corporates are actually trying to ask their employees to retire earlier. There's a lot of free time actually nowadays for people to be doing their lifelong learning and still continue to contribute, even after the age of 50 or 60. Those people who are interested in perhaps learning and then teaching as well, after teaching what they've learned, where I find that they actually make pretty decent teachers, and hopefully they can continue this age-old tradition of the older people guiding and teaching the younger generation. And I really like to see more of that happening, hopefully this is how the older generation can also try to connect with the younger generation in doing so.
Thanks very much, Susan. Those are very interesting points that you raised there. And I think also from the perspective that, education is something that, knowledge is not power, it's just potential power. But being able to connect people, being able to show them that there's a way for them to contribute beyond what maybe they traditionally have been trained to do, but also to tap into these other parts of it and draw on those skills they've accumulated over many years and experiences that they've accumulated many years. What we're really creating is a pool of talents that can also train further talents moving ahead. I'd like to just quickly share this quick question to leave you guys with at the end of this webinar. Is it 1% of $1 trillion or 10% of $1 million? To some people, it might actually be quite odd, actually, why our association will be pulling together almost potentially competitors, because even our association ourselves, we offer our readiness programs from ESG Ready certification program to circular transition program to carbon market journey readiness program, and really just trying to meet different people where they are in their sustainability journey. And a lot of people would then say, why are we actually talking to other providers who are doing trainings, workshop, facilitations, and things like that? And what I love about our association as an ecosystem builder is that we really want to be focusing on growing the pie, not just splitting that small pie and then, like fighting among ourselves in that sense, but actually how can we actually grow this pie so that all of us can actually benefit from it and at the same time empower even more people to take action. I really like sort of superhero movies, be it the Avengers or Justice League. And what I always draw from it is that all of them actually had their origin story. All of them actually took a journey and became who they are in their own right to become superheroes. And all of us actually are very much in our own way. But at the end of the day, they still had to come together as the Avengers or as the Justice League to be able to really drive that pace and that scale of impact that they needed at that time to solve it. So with that, at least, I guess I want to encourage every one of you to realize and unleash that superhero in yourself in the sustainability and climate realm, because it doesn't matter which background you actually came from, there is something there that you can contribute to that space. And it's not only in terms of charitable or pure volunteering, but there are skills, experiences that are valuable to society. And there are people out there who can only hear your voice. And the more that you actually step up to into that role and share what it is that you know, and to play a more active part in sustainability and climate action, together we can actually become those Avengers and Justice Leagues that can solve the climate change. We are the last generation that is in that working space to be able to decide. I have a 3-year-old and a 8-month-old, and I suddenly realized that their experiences are going to be very much dependent on decisions that we in this working functional sort of productive life part of our life stage are making for them. So with that, I'd like to say that don't try and do it alone. The ecosystem is here because we realize sustainability, ESG, climate is a huge, huge, huge topic. Nobody will be able to cover everything on their own. And as Shusheng, Jacqueline, and Olivia have pointed out, it's changing so fast. And there are so many different people who can bring in different creativity and ideas in. So lean into the ecosystem. And I hope that we'll see you someday with Circular Business Association. Thank you very much for joining us in this webinar today. Remember, time is of the essence, and we can't wait to work with you moving ahead. Thank you again to Shusheng from GoImpact, Jacqueline from Starlight Navigate, and Olivia from Climate Clarity for joining us in this webinar. We'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.